Hello and welcome to Menopause Made Easy with Tanya. I have a guest today. I used to have lots of guests and interviews, and then I kind of went into doing some solo episodes. And then Kelly reached out to me and she said, Tanya, I listened to your podcast, the episode on aggressive health, which is a great one if you have not listened to it. Really about becoming the CEO of your own health. And I think every once in a while we kind of need a little kick in the butt. I'm very empathetic and nice, but I'm also like, let's get going here. And so Kelly reached out to me and she says, Tanya, I'd love to come on your show. I have an amazing story to share. And I always think it's really fabulous just to hear other people's experiences going through this transition of perimenopause, menopause, and this beautiful awakening that we have. So, welcome, Kelly, to Menopause Made Easy. Happy to have you here. And what we're going to do is Kelly's story will evolve, open up as I ask her some questions. And so let's start with I actually wrote a couple things down. What was going on in your life during the most challenging part of your menopausal journey? So I know you were going through some life-changing things, some things with your son's health, some things with your awakening to what was going on. Can you just share some of what was happening and then let's take it from there?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate it. I really like your podcast. And as I said in our earlier discussion, you have so many great ideas and things to share that I haven't even heard of. And then when you share them, then I think, oh my gosh, I got to look that up. And so I do. And yeah, and
Good.
it's just so amazing. But anyway, so thank you. So I didn't even realize it, but um, you had mentioned that I had gone through some major issues with my son. I have three kids, and when my middle son was 10, he had a brain hemorrhage.
Ooh, not
And
good.
that was pretty much the start of perimenopause to me, although I didn't realize it at the time, because you're just living your life. And I didn't even pay attention to what perimenopause was or knew the term at all. So, but yeah, it ended up that he had a brain hemorrhage. He had three subsequent brain surgeries. I had a lot of stress associated with that. They initially had diagnosed him with brain cancer, and so it was like really, really, really stressful. And
Yes.
and thank God it was just a brain hemorrhage. So it was but it was a period of time, about 2 years probably, that I just sort of built up more and more stress and anxiety and things because of my son. And in the meantime, we didn't have a lot of money at all. And we had our own business, my ex-husband and I. And so we were trying to make it all work, and it was just so stressful. And after that whole period was over, my son is fine, by the way, now. Thank God.
Yay.
Yeah, he's 24 now. But he, well, so after about 2 years of going through that, I had experienced some tightening in my chest and some major chest pain in the middle of the night. And I thought I was having a heart attack. And I thought, "Ah, you're too young for this." But oh well. Honey, can you take me to the emergency room, please? And so he did. And I wasn't having a heart attack, but my thyroid was low. And it was like, oh, you need to get on some thyroid medication. I'm like, what the heck? What? How does this relate to my heart? How does this
Mhm.
relate to pain in my heart? And so I'm not one to go to the doctor much. And men are typically like this but I also was not one to go to the doctor much. And unless something was really wrong. And so, the emergency room was quite the thing. But so when they suggested that I go to my doctor and see what was going on. And I actually picked out an integrative medicine doctor. So he's a family practitioner, but he also takes a holistic view of what's going on in your life and your diet and your exercise, like everything, a holistic view of your life to see what it could be, to see the issue could be. And then so he asked me questions. I told him about my son and all that. And he's like, huh, let's check your adrenal gland. And so we did blood work and everything. It turns out my adrenal gland was basically, your adrenal gland is like a battery, and my battery had run out because it had produced so much cortisol, that stress hormone, because I was so stressed out over the past couple of years that it was just pretty much dead. And instead of, and so that the adrenal gland is something that I don't know all of the intricacies of this, so forgive me if I get this slightly wrong, but it certainly has to do with your thyroid.
Hmm.
And if the adrenal gland can be the root cause of thyroid malfunction.
Mm.
And it turned out to be that for me. Had I gone to a regular doctor, he would have prescribed me some regular thyroid medication, and I'd probably still be on it now. But instead, this integrative medicine guy prescribed just sublingual drops, and you can get them. They weren't even prescribed. I mean, you could get them over the counter of like DHEA and pregnenolone, I believe.
Hmm.
And so he said, take these for 6 months, and we'll recheck your adrenal gland. And so I did, and he did, and everything was fine.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so it jump started my adrenal gland, and that's all I needed.
Hmm.
And so that was like that was one of the first things that caused me to say, you know what, there really is something to me taking charge of my own health. And, because otherwise, what medication would I be on right now? And I recognize that I certainly could have needed it for sure. But the fact that it wasn't that, and I was able to fix it in other ways, more natural ways, was something that started getting me more and more interested in natural health and that sort of thing.
Yeah, because before
And
this, I know you have your precision nutrition level 2, and I have my level 1. That you were you in the health industry or not in the health industry at this time?
I was not. I actually I have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I was going to become a therapist and decided that just I would take people's problems home with me
Mm.
if I did that, because I'm rather empathetic, and I would just own the person's problem. And I just knew that I couldn't do that for a career. And
Mm.
so I didn't do that. So instead, I got a PhD in organizational psychology to go into companies and help them with their people problems. So it's kind of like helping people where they're at and helping them reach their potential. And so that's something that's the field that I was in, and that's the business that my ex-husband and I had, was in
Mhm.
organizational psychology stuff.
Right. So you weren't in the health industry when you were going through these issues because sometimes people, I say all the time, like I'm immersed in this because I read it. I've been doing this for over 3 decades, and I still don't even know the questions to ask. I didn't even know I was going through perimenopause,
Yeah,
right? And so whether you're
yeah,
in this industry or not, it wasn't even talked about. Gosh, if I could go back and relive my 40s, I totally would, knowing what I know now. But anyway, when you know better,
yeah.
you do better. So it's great that you were able to take this and be like, okay, what is underneath this? Could it be something else? And just take, instead of taking it at face value. And, wherever you are on your journey is where you are. So you can
Mhm.
always start to explore deeper. But I think what I really picked up from that was that you were listening to yourself. You just felt that this was not right, or it was a little rushed, or I'd like a second opinion, which
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
think is horrible to get. Just go get a second opinion and
right. Mhm.
collect data is what we talk a lot about in here. Collect data on yourself. And how old were you when this was happening?
I was probably 45-ish.
Right. So your hormones are already so
Yeah,
going through perimenopause was really not talked about. Uh
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah, yeah. So then a couple years later, I woke up one morning and the tendons on my first two fingers all the way up to through my forearm on both hands were inflamed and painful.
Hmm.
And what the heck? I thought it was from gardening, but I'm right-handed. I'm not like ambidextrous or anything. So there shouldn't have been an equal amount of pain on each hand or each arm or anything. And so I started researching, and um, those are initial symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I actually, back in my 20s, did a bike ride to, it's like a 750-mile bike ride to raise money for the Arthritis Foundation. And I sponsored this child who had rheumatoid arthritis. And so I knew a little bit about it. And and I knew that I didn't want to end up crippled and disfigured and stuff. And I also play the piano. And so I could picture my fingers as like, dead spiders.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I didn't want that at all. And so I was just like, I was scared. And I really wanted to see what might be at the root of that. Like,
Hmm.
why suddenly did I if the adrenal gland thing was at the root of the thyroid thing, then what is there something that could be at the root of this rheumatoid arthritis symptoms that I was having? And so I did some research and found uh, that sugar was an inflammatory and that gluten is also an inflammatory. And so I gave up both on the spot.
Hmm.
That's how scared I was.
Hmm.
I love cookies.
Hmm.
I used to have a t-shirt that had a Cookie Monster on it, and
Yeah.
I wore it all the time.
Go in the dark. So I know all about cookies. I've had
Yeah.
a fair share of cookies. Yes. Yes.
So cookies and breads and cakes. I didn't like cake so much, but I love breads and I love cookies and pasta and all of that stuff. I gave up on the spot along with sugar. And I went back to the integrative medicine guy and said, these are my symptoms. This is what seems like it is, rheumatoid arthritis. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And here's what I did. I gave up sugar and I gave up gluten. And
Hmm.
he's like, well, it's probably more likely the gluten for you. And I said, huh, okay. So I still kept way back on the sugar than versus what I've been having. But still to this day, I don't have gluten. And I've not had a rheumatoid arthritis flare up since then.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, and for most people, gluten sensitivity manifests itself in digestive issues, and uh, but not for me. For me, it's joint issues,
Hmm.
and so for me, it worked to give up gluten, and I miss cookies, but and I miss bread, but it's worth it to have fingers that work, and
Yeah.
and other body parts.
That
So.
can be very challenging though, because I still eat sugar and I know it's inflammatory. I eat far less than I used to. I far less. And I have given up other things that I'm not going to mention because I'm going to wait until a future episode on my podcast to share what
Mhm.
adventure I have been up to. But I do think it's really, some people can stop right on the spot and just be like, that's it, because I don't want my hands. In my 20s, I worked with seniors. I worked with seniors my whole life, and their biggest complaints were their hands and their feet, right?
Mm.
Because I'm telling you, I just finished teaching a foot class in my Vibrant Living Academy. We do hands and feet classes at least once a month, and you have to work them. You have to work each joint, and I mean, even though you were working them and this comes up, now that's a dietary thing, right? Because diet is
Yeah,
huge.
right.
Movement and
Yep.
diet is huge. So if you are moving and all of a sudden you get something happening with you, then you look at your diet and you see what is affecting me. And you can do an elimination diet where you take things out, see if you feel better. And I know I'm just going to put this one caveat for gluten free because I believe, I believe in a whole foods diet, which I know you do as well. So we're
Mm.
really trying to stay away from a processed gluten free diet because
Right. Yes.
yeah, so we don't want to just start turn to like gluten-free cookies and gluten-free
Right.
licorice and gluten-free bread and gluten-free muffins, which is what I've seen
Yep.
happen with some of my clients. It's like, can we get some carrots and maybe some celery and
Mhm.
some
Yes.
steak? Let's
Hmm.
put real food
Yeah.
into this diet. But I'm sure you were eating healthy as well. It was just that your body eventually just said, that's enough right now. We're done.
Yeah. And for me, I think it was a buildup of the gluten
Yeah,
in my system.
yeah.
And so I can have like a bite of a cookie or like a bite of bread or something because it's not building up in my system, and that's okay. But yeah, to your point of just substituting gluten-free
Hmm.
baked goods and pastas and all that stuff, that doesn't well, I guess one of the positives to that is that honestly, the gluten-free baked goods and cookies and stuff like that just really don't taste good. Especially the bread. The bread's just awful.
Hmm.
But and the cookies are generally really bad too. There's a couple of brands I've found, but I'm not
Yeah.
gonna share them here.
There's
Um,
also, you know what? There's a really good, I make a flaxseed bread. It's delicious. So can you have almond flour?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, so it's almond flour and ground up flax and some eggs and some yogurt and oh my gosh, it's delicious. If I remember, I will put it in the show notes or ask me for it because it's very good. So I'll eat that and some bread. But yeah, I think variety. I think after a while, if you could just eat some, and again, everybody's different. Everybody's different. But I will tell you that I know from myself and my clients that they're like, if I eat sugar and gluten or things that don't agree with me, like my hands feel stiffer or
Mm,
like I can feel it. So I
huh,
think it's that
yeah.
level of awareness
Hmm.
and I don't know if you were like me, but I lied to myself for years about sugar in my diet because I could feel the bloated. I could feel how it was causing me to be moody and irritable and lots of other things. I was like, oh, it can't be all that, those cookies, but it was.
Yeah, I find that now even when I eat, if I have gluten-free bread or cookies, or it just makes me feel yuck.
It does.
You
It
know?
does.
So I can't even, like, I bought myself a bread machine because I found some flour that isn't
Hmm.
processed in the United States or isn't processed the normal way, and I think that's really what's causing me the issue. Um, but so I made myself a loaf of bread that from this other flour, but I could only eat about a slice of it, and I'm just like, it just made me feel too full and yucky.
Oh, yeah.
I
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really easy. Well, for me, it's pretty easy for me to convince myself that I don't like something that's not good for me.
Yeah, that's good.
Like,
I
yeah, I
will.
know. So and that's one of the things for me is that I can convince myself that it's not worth it anyway. So like my husband will get cookies at the grocery store or cookies at the gas station or something, and I'll be like,
No.
nah, I give that about a five,
Yeah.
because I was a cookie connoisseur.
Yes. Reply.
And then I'm like, and just by looking at it, I can tell if it's too dry or too floury or too something. And
Yeah.
I tell him, and he tastes it, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right." I'm like, "Pff, I'm telling you."
Yeah.
But
Well, that's what I've
anyway,
said on this show a few times, well, many times is if the food that you really love is not a 9 or a 10, then don't eat it. Like store-bought anything is zero appeal to me. Zero.
yeah,
So
yeah.
knock that off. I will mention I love listening to a podcast called I think it's called Culture Apothecary. And
Hmm.
the lady who runs it, she's a spitfire. And there is an episode on bread. And this lady, it's really worth listening to because she believes in bread and she is all in, and she sells in the States flour that is supposed to be out of this world. So, again, for anybody listening, just if you go to Culture Apothecary, Alex is her name, the host, and put in bread, it will pull up this episode. And it's really worth listening to because it really shows you how the additives, like all the stuff that's happened to our wheat over here is not good. And she has managed to have a very pure wheat product. Because if you go to Europe, you don't have the same effects over there. So, I'm hoping that we can
Right.
tend to clean up our food supply
Yeah.
with all the GMOs and the pesticides and
Mhm.
everything they've been put on there, because I think that is actually a bigger part of the problem.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about your rheumatoid arthritis, which is really interesting because I love hearing how there's some people just want a pill. That's fine. That's fine. And other people like you and myself are like, okay, what's behind this? What's the root cause? What can I start to change? You did it all, right? Like you just decided. I kind of dip my toe in and out to really go like, is it really this? Oh my gosh. And then I have to do a lot of emotional and mental unwinding. But I love your story about our rheumatoid arthritis and also the adrenal fatigue. So just another question I have for you. When you say you were like truly listening to your body, what does that feel like, look like? Because there's so many of us that are disconnected from our bodies. Like we're not actually feeling what is happening. So what did that feel like in your journey to really listen? What did listening feel like?
I'm trying to tune into my body right now to feel what it's saying. Um,
Okay.
uh, no, so like when in my 20s, I started, I guess I'm going back to my 20s right now because I really started doing a lot of exercise and running and riding and like riding, bicycle riding, um, long distances back in my 20s. And I really kind of started being in tune with where my body was in terms of tiredness and energy levels and strength and fitness and injury and the difference between injury and soreness and all that stuff. So I kind of started back then
Mhm.
listening to my body so I wouldn't just completely destroy it doing one of the activities I like to do. And I didn't really pay attention to my eating habits in my 20s because I didn't have to. You
Mhm.
know, nobody really talked about it back. That was back in the days when fat was bad,
Mhm.
like Snackwell's cookies with no fat and, all these stuff. And all that crap that I convinced myself tasted good. But
Mhm.
anyway, and I also, so another thing that I did was I had three children, but I didn't give birth to any of them in a hospital.
Mhm.
I gave birth to two of them in a birthing center and then the third one at home.
Mhm.
And my midwife wasn't even there.
Hmm.
She,
By the third
yeah,
one,
she
you're a
was supposed
pro
to be, but
though.
she wasn't. Yeah, our babysitter actually was there to catch the baby.
Wow.
That was a whole story in and of itself. But anyway, so I guess from pretty early on, I was kind of in tune with my body. And one of the reasons why I wanted to give birth to my kids naturally because the first one, I wanted to see how giving birth compared to a week-long bike ride from San Francisco to San Diego to see which was harder.
Mhm.
And
I like it.
yeah, and that was my little experiment.
And which one was
And
harder?
well,
Or it's just different?
they were different. They were certainly, yeah, because, yeah, my daughter was giving birth to her was really hard, and there was a back labor, and that was really difficult. But the bike rides seemed to get easier as it went along. Giving birth did not.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so I listened to my body in that way. And then so what does it feel like? Your question. I really pay attention to I pay attention to my aches and pains because I have them now that when I didn't before. Um, I pay attention to why it might be happening.
Mhm.
Like for a silly example, I slept, like this for the longest time with my
Mhm.
hands, like underneath my pillow or whatever, my elbows bent.
Mhm.
And after a while, I noticed that my well, eventually, I noticed that my elbows, that the nerves from my arms through my, gosh, like right down here.
Forearm.
Um, yeah, my forearm and stuff, but were sore. They were painful all the time. And I didn't know why. And then I thought, I wonder if it would help if I slept with my arms straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a number of months and the pain went away. And so
Mm.
I've done it ever since. I don't bend my arms when I sleep because otherwise it'll hurt the tendons or whatever, ligaments or something in my arms. And I sleep with them not like straight, like stiff as a board, but just like
Right.
comfortably straight. And I don't have the pain anymore. And so it's just a matter of like listening to what's going on with my body and trying to get to the bottom of it. And that's kind of what I've always tried to do.
So you
So,
sound much like what I teach, and I call it practicing. Like first of all, it's awareness, and
mhm,
then it's like experimentation. Right? So
yeah.
we're not looking for perfection, but we're like, I wonder if I did this, if it would help. Oh,
Hmm.
that helps, or that didn't help. So I wonder if I do this, would it help? So it sounds
Hmm.
like you have, one of the mindset shifts that I had was curiosity. And so
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a lot of curiosity, like, is the bike ride going to feel worse than giving natural birth? I wonder, right? Like I love that about you. That's very neat, right? Just to have that wonderment, which we lose a lot of the times because we're looking to be fixed and we're looking to have
Yeah.
like an immediate payback. And that's why, again, whatever people do is fine. Going on pills to take away the pain. Whereas I'm probably the opposite and sound a bit like you, where I'm like, I wonder why I'm feeling this way. How am I standing? How am I sitting? How am I moving? Do I need to change up my movement? Am I becoming repetitive with something? Right? And just kind of be more curious and have some compassionate. And I'm also not in a hurry anymore. I stopped being in a hurry because I'm just like you with your arms. I don't know if you noticed it when you were sleeping the next night, or maybe it was 7 nights later, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is actually making a difference. Right. And so I think it's
Hmm.
giving ourselves permission to ask questions, to be curious, to try different things, be experimental. And I would say one thing just about the listening. I love that with the aches and pains and just asking, like, where is this coming from? If I'm really being honest, which I think sometimes I don't know if it's a lack of honesty or a lack of awareness or even just I'm trying to think of the word where it's taking that responsibility for our what we're doing in our bodies, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, mhm,
I think it definitely starts with awareness. If you're not aware of something, you're not going to do anything to try and fix it. So
mhm,
really and one thing that performance nutrition teaches is that, stopping on occasion to see how you're feeling. Are you full? Are you 80% full? If you had to put a percentage on it, would you say you're 50% full or 80% full or 120% full? So I really like that. They teach that you really stop and pay attention to what your body is feeling and and if you want to put a number on it, like they teach, I think it's a great idea, frankly, because it helps you become more aware of what's going on with yourself. So not only can you do that with hunger and with fullness, but you can do that with pain levels.
mhm.
I tore my meniscus a little over a year ago, and I have spent the last year and 3 months trying to fix it and recover from it without surgery.
Mhm.
and and I managed to do that, and I'm like on the mend from that as well.
So what are
And
some things you did for that?
so I did something called platelet-rich plasma
Hmm.
injections, along with something called prolotherapy, which is like it's dextrose that's injected into ligaments and cartilage and stuff in order to tighten those things up. And so the PRP rebuilds and repairs, and it's kind of like a fertilizer, and it helps your body heal itself.
Okay.
And my tear was such that I could be successful with that. There are complete tears you can't do that with. You have to have surgery. But I was lucky enough to be able to avoid surgery and have PRP injections. And that worked for me, but it won't work for everybody.
Right. So
But
again, just asking questions, right? Like, is there
mhm,
another
yeah,
alternative to going under, having surgery? If there is, what are
yeah.
they? Mm-hmm.
And so I talked about all these things that I've done to avoid taking medication, avoid having surgery, and all this stuff. But let me give you an example of when I said, I need something to help me.
Yes.
And that's so when I uh, really was in the throes of perimenopause and well, and so I started taking DHEA supplements in order to kind of help my body produce its own estradiol, and that worked for a little bit. Um, then I was having hot flashes, and so the DHEA kind of helped that, but then it stopped helping. And I was like, I can't. I was having 15 to 20 hot flashes
Wow.
during the day with, I don't even know how many at night. It was debilitating. And
Hmm.
I went to my gynecologist and said, I can't do this. And she put me on HRT. She
Mm-hmm.
put me on estradiol and progesterone. And then we worked on the dosages in order to get it right to where I was only having about 4 or 5 hot flashes a day. And then I read something about testosterone and and saw that all the benefits of women for women. One of them was a reduction of hot flashes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I didn't know that. And so I printed this paper out, research article, to give to my doctor to say, hey, look at this, to
Mm-hmm.
see if she would possibly prescribe me some testosterone. And she did. And so I'm also on the lowest dose of testosterone, and that has eliminated the rest of my hot flashes. And
Beautiful.
so I'm on HRT, and
Okay.
I am so happy that I chose to do that
And how
because
many
it's
years has
uh,
that been? You said like a year and a half or what longer? Sorry, I forget. How long did
oh
you?
um so I had hot flashes. Well, they got worse and worse.
Okay.
And so I've been on HRT for probably I don't know, 4-ish years now. And I just started on the testosterone a couple years ago. And
Kelly,
it's just been
do you know,
wonderful.
I think it's Kelly Casperin, Dr. Kelly Casperin, or something like that. She is all about testosterone and
Mhm.
fascinating to listen to. And just
Yeah.
why should women or why should men get testosterone? Because women have testosterone as well. And it's also,
Mhm.
it plays an important part. I have been very low in testosterone. I have not done testosterone path yet because they wanted to try the progesterone, the estrogen, well, specifically the progesterone first, and then the estrogen, just to see how that's reacting in my body. And
Mhm.
I don't, I had a very, when I was speaking with my doctor, I was just like, oh, I had pride in being able to, get through things my whole life without taking, I guess you can call this medication hormones. But anyway, and so I had to unravel a lot of my beliefs because
Mhm.
I'm really looking at it from a preventative point of view for the progesterone and the estrogen, and I'll start to tackle testosterone later. But I thank you for sharing that because I know that, there's a great book called Estrogen Matters. You know,
Yeah.
in
Yep.
2002, we had some really misrepresented evidence come out of studies, which basically took millions of women off HRT, and we're seeing a lot of fallout from that. But I think the
Mhm.
important thing again is you had a healthy lifestyle, you're active, you have you're a PN nutrition coach, so you have a lot of knowledge about how to eat properly. You took a lot of sugar and gluten out of your diet because I always talk about when you do go on a medication, I truly believe there are some lifestyle changes that need to happen.
Yeah.
That's why you and I both have a job because they're challenging to fix and change. And so I know that you could do the hormones first, and then that could help you with some lifestyle changes. But I think if you're being prescribed them without some knowledge of making some lifestyle changes, I'm not for it, quite honestly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that HRT is going to completely fix you completely, just like all by itself. I
Yeah,
think it's should be used in conjunction with other things to
yeah.
help. And, diet and movement. I don't like the word diet. I
No,
hate
I
that
don't
word.
either. I call it nutrition,
Yeah.
or I call it your eating style, because my eating style
Mhm.
changes depending on the season. It changes depending on my goals, right? And the more that I just really try and focus on a whole food as much as I can, and some things that bring me pleasure. I used to be a much more hedonistic eater, and I have a lot of emotion tied up with eating, so I've spent many decades unraveling that. But to your point, what you said, I feel better. Like I feel better physically, mentally, emotionally when
Yeah.
I'm on my style of eating.
Yeah.
When I veer off, I feel it. I feel
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
and every once in a while, I'm like, like a child. I wish that wasn't true, but it is. And so I have a choice, which was what that episode was about on being the CEO of your own health. You have
Yeah.
a choice. You have a choice, right? So there you
Yeah.
go. Okay, well that's
And it's
good.
not like you can't enjoy the foods. Like as I
No,
said before, I take a bite of cookie every once in a while, and that's enough for me.
yeah. No, I'm getting to be more about quality. Well, I am more about quality than quantity. I used to be about quantity
Yeah.
and quality, and now it's just more about the quality. So what are some tiny habits? I think you mentioned your energy was low, I guess, with your adrenals not working off or not working that well. But
Mhm.
can you think of some tiny? I'm always like want to share with women. I say, small hinges swing big doors. Simple shifts done consistently over time create sustainable results. What are some tiny things where, people look at it and they go, oh, that's not going to make a difference? Like your arm, sleeping with your arm would be a really good example. Can you think of some other ones that have either helped with your energy or helped with your vitality or just anything?
Yeah, there's one that sticks out in my mind. You can do anything for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there was I don't know if she still exists, but this lady she called herself the Fly Lady. And it
Mm-hmm.
was all about home organization and specifically for like the housewives and stuff. And so all about, you know, just it was really good stuff that she had, clean your sink, shine your sink, put your shoes on every day and instead of wearing your, pajamas, get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't feel like just a house person all day long. But
Right.
anyway, one of her things was you can do anything for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You can you can watch TV for 15 minutes, you can read a book for 15 minutes, you can talk on the phone, you can scroll through Facebook, you can clean your sink, you can vacuum, you can do anything whether it's good or bad for 15 minutes. And you can take a walk. You can put on your shoes, go outside, and take a 15-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes just
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a it doesn't have to be a strenuous walk or a strenuous anything. Just go outside for 15 minutes. If you can't afford 15 minutes, then do it for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you know? But something, it gets you started. And
Mm-hmm.
that helped me get my dissertation done.
Mm.
I had little kids at the time when I was doing my dissertation for my PhD, and I set the timer for 15 minutes. And I got out my stuff and I started working on my dissertation. And I worked on it for 15 minutes. And when the timer went off, I got to decide. whether I wanted to take another 15 minutes or just be done. And with little kids, it's kind of hard, but I could do 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just did 15 minutes a day, and
Mm-hmm.
that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like, oh no, I'm in the middle of a thought. I want to, I want to reset this for another 15 minutes. And so I did, and I gave myself permission to stop after the next 15 minutes and decide again whether I wanted to continue or stop. And so I've taken that with me for however many years.
Yeah.
You can do anything for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So do something healthy for 15 minutes, or go outside, take a walk, or do meditation for 15 minutes, or whatever it is that makes you feel good about yourself, that
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what, that I always mention that to people because I've been, exercising since I was a teenager. I've been personal training and teaching since the late 80s, early 90s. And I still have to be I knock it down to 30 seconds sometimes. I'm like, Tanya, 30 seconds. Just go do 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
then sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. It
Yeah.
just it's the nobody it's just like the Mel Robbins says 5 4 3 2 1 go, right? Like it's just doing it because no you just have to make yourself do it. Like there's nobody's going to come and make yourself do it. And I think some of that comes from desire of what you want versus what you don't want. But when I'm teaching classes, I always say to my ladies that show up, the hardest part was getting here.
For sure.
Hardest part was getting,
Hmm.
because in 1 second, you can decide and then you don't, right?
Yeah.
So I really just
Yeah.
honestly thank yourself for doing those hard things, for making those decisions. And the other thing I said to the ladies, and they all agreed with me, is they all said, when I made the decision not to come, I regretted it. But I have never come to class and not regretted it.
Right. That's one of the things my husband always says is you never regret a workout.
Never. Never, right?
Yeah.
And so, or just choosing a healthier option, or being curious or compassionate, or, like you
Hmm.
said, you take your dissertation, which is a massive project, and you just chunk it
Hmm.
down into 15 minutes. I
Yeah.
just started to work on a podcast and I have it sitting right here. And it's the I'm going to do it phase. And I'm just thinking about how this is all going to come out now because I hear so many people say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that." And then a year later, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, no, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do that." I'm like,
Yeah.
want
Yep.
to help people hear their language.
Uh-huh.
Is
Yeah.
it important for them to actually want to do it? Right? And just stop. If you don't want to do it, just say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I'm done with that,
Yeah.
and really commit to something. So it's interesting to hear our language and how many times we just keep pushing things
Yeah.
off.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As
The
a
other thing that helps,
psychologist, you may have some insight into that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, as a psychologist, you might have some insight into that. Or
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that helps me and that I tell my students, because I also teach psychology classes, and I tell them it's important to block some time off for yourself to do whatever it is. So if you have decided to work on an assignment or read whatever, or read that stupid paper that you have to read in order to be able to write your paper, um, just set a schedule, like make an appointment with yourself to do it. And you are as just as important, if not more important, than everybody else.
Hmm.
So schedule time with yourself and keep it.
Yes.
And that helps some people. And other people are like, yeah, well, I'll get to that.
Yes. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Do you have do you have something you could tell your 40-year-old self having gone through perimenopause? First of all, I will say honestly, when we went through it, nobody was talking about perimenopause. No, there
Right.
was no name for it. There
Right.
was there was nothing. So
Yep.
and And surprisingly enough, even with all this information, maybe I'm just in a bubble, there's still some women who have no idea. They really have no idea. If you could reflect back from yourself where you are now to perimenopause, what advice would you give yourself? What's something you would pay attention to, or wish you had known, or if you were going through something, somebody could have said, "Oh, you know what? It's your hormones." Like, is there something that you can think of? I'm throwing her some doozies of questions today.
Um, I had a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I've been kind of anxious through my whole life, pretty much. Um, I It is just part of me, part of who I was, but it really ramped up during perimenopause. Part of that could be attributed to my son's issues. I mean, it's kind of anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
Um, but the other part of it, it was just me, and my emotions in general, not, just not being happy. Like I just wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that had to do with my life at the time and the ex-husband that I had. And but part of that too was hormone related, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So would I have been on as unhappy as I was had I not been going through perimenopause? How
Mm-hmm.
much of that was hormone related?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I couldn't answer. I can't answer. I don't know. I don't know. But it could be that. But some of that emotional stuff that you're going through has to do with your hormones.
Yeah, well, when that
So
progesterone drops, right, that is,
yeah,
you can't
yep,
deal with anxiety the same way. Your moods are all over the place. You don't know who to
yeah,
talk to sometimes. And women 45 to 55 have the highest suicide rate, and also initiate 70% of divorces. So there's
there's me.
definitely,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely
yeah,
something going on where I can even remember saying to my husband, like, I'm not happy. And
yeah,
then I'm kind of like, well, what is happiness? Are we always supposed to be happy? Why aren't I happy? I have a great life. Why am I so like that feeling? It's
yeah.
undescribable in a sense, right? And it's
Hmm.
not going on a trip. It's not doing things that make you happy. It's this inside. It's
Yep.
deep. It's
Hmm. Yeah,
not external. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say is it is such a
yeah.
gift to be able to go inside at this time, inside,
Hmm.
and really get to know who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because there's some
Hmm.
definitely parts of myself I didn't want to shine a light on, but really doing that internal deep dive. But I wish I had known in my 40s the same thing. I was anxious. I was didn't feel happy. I was, oh, I just all over the place.
Yeah, so maybe is that if you can't find an external reason for your unhappiness,
Mm,
if you're not in a, you're not happy with your job, you're not happy with your home life, you're not happy with whatever, and you can't find any reason, like it doesn't make any logical sense that you're unhappy. Maybe it's a hormone related thing.
hmm.
Maybe it's you're going through perimenopause, maybe your hormones are fluctuating and that's what's causing this.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
getting
this
your
is
hormones
when a lot
checked
of
would be
women
good.
get put on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications instead of looking at
Mhm.
hormones. So I've had Dr.
Right.
Brown on here and some others who really say, like, you need to not just take the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety. You need to look at your hormones,
Yeah.
because that could
Yep.
be the answer. Um,
Yep.
very good. And as well as, doing some work on yourself as well. So what
Hmm.
are you currently up to? And are you helping women live better lives at the moment? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to brighten up the world, Kelly?
What am I doing? Gosh, I am doing a variety of things actually. I'm helping women live better lives. I'm not doing that full time at this point, although I want to start doing more and more of that. I'm teaching psychology classes and helping my students reach their potentials. And yeah, that's been the overarching um, reason for my being here on this earth, I think, is to help people take steps farther. And I've done that through teaching. I've done it through, career counseling and executive coaching and and health coaching for women. And now my focus really is on helping midlife women get to know the 2.0 versions of themselves
Mm-hmm.
and and part of getting to know that 2.0 version of yourself is really digging deep and figuring out what's not working and experimenting with something that does work now,
Mm-hmm.
because things don't work the same as they used to. It's not a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I really have a passion for helping people do at this point, is putting my arm around them and saying, "Hey, come on, we can do this together. I can help you figure this out."
Yeah, and
And
we need wise women. We need healthy, strong, wise women to guide us. Unfortunately, many people are not well physically, mentally, and emotionally. So, it's people like you and I who are here to guide and assist and support and help and cheer on and support and raise women up to be vibrant, energetic beings so that they can be a light for so many, right? And this is a time that we are, our children have gone. We get to spend some time with ourselves. We get to,
finally, yeah,
yes, we get to play and we get to be an
yep,
inspiration.
yeah,
And I love your story about, your arthritis, your adrenal glands, the working through, getting divorced and having a sick child and just children in general and all those things, they're real. They're real. And so when you can be a light and say, I got through this, and whatever problems you have, we can get through them.
yeah,
You just have to want to just take that first simple step. Don't look at the top of the mountain, just take the next little step.
right,
So, closing
right.
this off today, is there anything else you would like to share where people can find you? Anything you'd like to say?
Well, my website is www.revitalizeyourhealth.com with dashes between the three words.
Mhm.
And that's really what I'm here to do, is to, man, when you go through something, sometimes I think that there's a silver lining that you can find through anything bad that happens. And sometimes that silver lining, or the good thing that you can find, is just the ability to be empathetic, to be able to understand and be able to walk in the shoes of people who are going through what you went through.
Mhm.
And to me, that's extremely important.
Mhm.
That's a good thing. So whatever bad thing you go through, there's always something good that comes out of it, even if you can't see it in the current moment. You can see it when you look back on it, and you can help other people.
Yeah. Like I know I can help people with emotional eating and stress eating because I lived it. And I know I was trying to get to the top of the mountain by Monday, every Monday. I'm gonna, and then I was like, okay, enough of that mindset. So really doing the mindset work, the inner work, I say we're puzzles. We're just putting the pieces of the puzzles together and to
Mhm.
enjoy the journey, right? And so, well, good for
Right.
you, Kelly, for being out there to help women revitalize their life and their health. And I appreciate the work you're doing, and I thank you for being here today. And I will leave your website and anything else about you in the show notes. And anything else before we head off?
No, I want to thank you very much for having me on here. It was fun. I
You're
enjoyed
welcome.
myself.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Menopause Made Easy with Tanya. And if you could do us both a favor, and social media loves it when you comment, like, or share our posts. And if you could subscribe and even comment or rate this podcast, that would be fabulous. It takes a village to help everybody up, right? And Kelly and I love giving our wisdom and our love and support to all of you. And if you can share this with others, that would be wonderful. And we'll see you in the next episode.